How's it going, Yankee fans? Welcome back to Fireside Yankees with your boys Alex and Ryan. So the Yankees have off today and getting some much-needed rest after kicking the absolute crap out of the Cincinnati Reds. And, Aaron Judge gets the day off yesterday. Yankees still win. Luis Severino shoves 4.2 innings, gives up 1 run. I think it was a good day. I think we walked away with some really good storylines. But one I want to discuss is Josh Donaldson, who recently cut his finger open and set his, timeline for return back a couple weeks. And the Yankees right now do not need Josh Donaldson. I think you can agree. I think all of you guys can agree. And I certainly think so. Josh Donaldson does not need to be starting on this team anymore, right? Like he's, owed $25 million for this season. At this point, it's probably a little bit less if you prorate it. But at the end of the day, DJ LeMahieu's playing Gold Glove level third base defense right now. And his offense, yes, he's struggled in some regards, but, he's still a net positive in the offensive categories. And compared to Josh Donaldson, he's head and shoulders above. He's also, 3 years younger, 4 years younger? So you're looking at a player who's pretty much still in his prime and doing some really good stuff for this Yankee team. And putting Josh Donaldson back into his starting spot may be the worst thing the Yankees could do for the infield. I want to discuss that. I want to discuss what his role would even be on this roster moving forward, since we have a lot of talent, we have a lot of guys, and I don't think we have enough roster spots to give up because of the outfield kind of position, left field being a little bit wary, and getting Giancarlo Stanton back. Like, where does Josh Donaldson really go? What spot does he take? So I want to discuss that, what he's going to end up serving for this team moving forward, maybe even being DFA'd similar to Aaron Hicks, just eating the money, move forward, and you don't need him. So I want to have that discussion with you, Ryan. But before we dive into things, how you do today, my friend?
I'm doing well. The Yankees have played excellent baseball lately. They've figured out ways to score runs consistently. They haven't really put themselves in many situations where you feel like, oh, the offense failed them, with the exception really of that one game against Toronto where Chris Bassett shut the Yankees down. But, you feel like you were due for a game like that after just absolutely destroying everything in sight. As you mentioned, Luis Severino's return has been massive for the Yankees, right? He pitched really well in his first outing. His velocity looked good. But, as they continue to get pieces back, Josh Donaldson seems like the one that is a little, I guess the word for it would be redundant. You feel as if you can do a lot better than Josh Donaldson. Even with what you have currently, you could make a reasonable argument Oswald Peraza is currently more helpful for this team than Josh Donaldson would be, and Peraza doesn't have a roster spot right now. Then we can get into whether, Peraza should be on the roster or not, but it's evident that it's not. The thing is, it's not abundantly clear he should be. So if I think Peraza's a better player and he currently isn't on the roster, then I don't know why I would want Josh Donaldson on the roster. Kind of like, as you mentioned with Aaron Hicks, it's kind of like one of those situations where do you just kind of eat the money, right? I think you're going to be okay with eating the money if need be. And another big factor when it comes to this is the fact that, well, the Yankees don't really need to bring him back. He's on a 1-year deal. The thing with Aaron Hicks was that, there were legitimate questions about whether they would DFA him because there was 3 years left on his deal. And they didn't just DFA him for, Giancarlo Stanton coming back or, even to call up an Oswald Peraza. They did this for Greg Allen, right? And no disrespect to Greg Allen, who's been an awesome Yankee in his brief time. And I think he's been fun, right? I get that. But he isn't necessarily the guy you imagined the Yankees were going to make the Aaron Hicks DFA for. So, with that being said, I think the Yankees are kind of just done rostering guys that they don't want to roster. If they don't want to roster you, they're just not going to, in my opinion. I think that's the right way to handle it. I think that's the way they should be handling things. If you don't want to roster a guy, you shouldn't feel forced to. And I like that that's the direction they've chosen to take. So, we'll see how that works for them going forward. But I don't really think Josh Johnson has much shelf life left on this roster. I don't know if you disagree with me there.
The truth is that Josh Donaldson right now serves a net negative contribution to this team, and Aaron Boone before the season came out and said, we think Josh Donaldson's going to bounce back. His bat speed is as fast as ever, and he's got the power. But the truth is that, his hard hit rate is decreasing. He's 37 years old. Yes, he put together a really good defensive season, which saved his WRC plus at 97 last year, but he hit 222 with a 308 OBP, right? Like, he did not play well objectively offensively. He was a liability. He had the highest strikeout rate since his 2012 season, where he only played 75 games at 27.1% for the first time since that year as well. He dropped below a 10% walk rate. So all of his main contributions have regressed, and his home runs, 15 home runs, still nothing crazy for a player who hit 41 back in 2015. Like, this is not the same player. He has 62 RBIs. Like, this is a shell of what Josh Donaldson used to be. The fact that Aaron Boone continues to kind of come out and say Josh is still capable of like MVP caliber performances, he's still an elite player, is just ridiculous at this point, because it's objectively just a lie. It's just a blatant lie. And I get the fact that, and to give credit to Aaron Boone, he has no choice, right? Brian Cashman hand-delivered him a regressing player year over year, considering last year, gave him a player that was on the way down and asked him to incorporate him to basically save face, because you don't acquire a $25 million per year player and then cut him immediately. You have to save face. You have to kind of play the game. And Aaron Boone's doing everything he can and saying the right thing, so I'll give him credit there. It's not really his fault. Cashman kind of dumped him on him, and maybe Boone wanted him. Who knows? But we don't really know much about that narrative for now. But what we do know is that Josh Donaldson playing third base would be a net negative for the team, as I referenced earlier. DJ LeMahieu was having a good year. Like, you saw him yesterday, Ryan. I mean, 2 tremendous defensive plays on the hot corner. Tremendous. Like, head and shoulders better than Josh Donaldson right now. Defensively, I think he is equal, if not better, than Josh. And Josh was arguably a Gold Glove level defensive player at the hot corner last year. Offensively, not even comparable. Now, the question is, if you do end up starting Josh Donaldson again, what happens to the infield, right? Rizzo's still your first baseman. Anthony Volpe's still your shortstop. Second base becomes a little bit more of a question mark. Does Gleyber Torres suddenly become tradable? Is that a narrative that people will run with? Does DJ LeMahieu go back to his utility role and just help take some pressure off of Anthony Rizzo, take some pressure off of Gleyber Torres, gets a couple more days off because he's been playing a lot. We don't want to get him injured halfway through the season again, like last year with the toe injury. So maybe there is a benefit to this in the sense that Josh comes back. I'll play devil's advocate here, and that Josh comes back to the team. He starts on the hot corner, and DJ LeMahieu ends up going back to his utility role. They give him plenty of rest. They're allowed to give second base some rest, and Gleyber Torres can have some days off. And then Anthony Rizzo, who has the chronic back issue, is going to need time off as well, and DJ LeMahieu can help supplement that. That's the devil's advocate argument. What are your thoughts about that? Because I do think there is a conversation to be had that maybe he does still have value there, but as you mentioned before, you have Oswaldo Cabrera who could fill that role. You have Oswald Peraza who can fill that role. Is Josh Donaldson better than those two right now? Is he going to offer you more quality and consistency? That's the conversation. That's the question I want to ask you.
Yeah, so I know Cabrera struggled, so I'm not going to sit here and say, like, oh, it's obvious that Josh Donaldson's worse than Oswaldo Cabrera. And I'm going to say another thing that, I think you can agree with as well. I think Josh Donaldson has more upside than a guy like Aaron Hicks. Like, I think we're having this conversation more so because the infield's in a better spot than the outfield is. And, you feel comfortable with your infield right now. And so you don't feel like you want to make any shakeups unless it's for something that, is an unforeseen upgrade, right? And that isn't what Josh Donaldson is. You know what I mean? So it's not really like that's kind of the situation here where it's like the infield is in a good spot and Josh Donaldson doesn't do much to help that. So what is the reason for rostering him? But I will say that, for Peraza, I'd rather just have Peraza. I'd rather just, especially considering the fact that, I think the defensive upside with having Oswald Peraza at shortstop and Anthony Volpe at second base is like it's ridiculous. Those two guys would probably combine to give you like 20 defensive runs saved. Those two guys are ridiculously talented defensive players. I know Volpe is more of like a mediocre defensive shortstop by certain metrics. Defensive runs saved is positive. Outs above average has him slightly below average. So I'll say he's right around just solid. But Peraza is supposed to be an elite level defender, and Volpe, one of the only real big knocks on his defense is his glove. So you kind of take away that really big flaw that he has with his not his glove, excuse me, his arm. You take away that big issue because shortstop not as demanding in terms of your arm, and suddenly you're in a situation where you feel like you have a really strong middle infield. That's a shakeup I'm willing to make, but that's got nothing to do with Josh Donaldson. So I feel like I'm willing to make that move if I am Josh Donaldson. And then even at DH, right? Like you already have Giancarlo Stanton, so like is Josh Donaldson going to DH? That would feel a little bit weird. Aaron Judge was supposed to try out left field. He hasn't all year. I imagine that the injury situation may have slowed that down, but do you now want to put him in left field? And it's not like we're doing it for like a Jock Peterson type or Shohei Ohtani. I know the Yankees are acquiring Shohei Ohtani, but it's not like you're doing it for a world beater, a difference maker in your lineup, a guy you just, you have to move heaven and earth in order to get them in the lineup. You're doing it for Josh Donaldson, who, as you mentioned, hasn't hit since 2021, right? We can say that when the Yankees acquired him, there was hope that he would be able to hit, sure. And yes, Aaron Boone's kind of put in a weird spot where if they bring him back, you kind of have to play him and figure out what you have in him before you cut him. But end of the day, it's just Josh Donaldson doesn't have that upside he used to have. Josh Donaldson regressed a lot in terms of his batted ball data last year, and the Yankees just have better options in-house, right? And I think you can agree with me here. It would be far more beneficial for this franchise, for this year and going forward, for them to give those reps to Peraza before they even try giving them to Josh Donaldson. So, it's kind of a weird spot where it's just like there's no future for Josh Donaldson here. He's not coming back after this season. So it's not like you're trying to keep a relationship there. And I think you saw that tweet where it was like someone asked Josh Donaldson, like, when is he coming back or something like that. And he's like, oh, I'm on the Jacoby Ellsbury timeline. Now, I can't confirm that. I wasn't there. But that's definitely interesting. Like, I don't think it's out of the picture for the Yankees to like be paying the guy to stay away, right? They are paying Aaron Hicks to stay away. So, what do you think about that? Do you think that they're probably just going to end up DFAing him? Like, what do you think that the end game is for Josh Donaldson?
I think that DFAing Josh Donaldson right now would probably make Cashman, his head explode. Having to cut bait on Aaron Hicks and the $27.5 million left on his contract, and then having to cut the $25 million left on Donaldson's contract, I literally think Cashman will have a heart attack. I don't think he can stomach it. To be honest with you, cutting $50 million worth of players in a week, it's unlikely to say the least. So, if we sit here right now, I'm going to say the probability it's going to happen is about 20%. It's unlikely, but it makes logical sense to do it because you don't want to add another person to this equation when it doesn't need to have another person to this equation. He is an outsider. He's like outside of the parentheses. You know what I mean? If you're solving for X, that dude is outside the parentheses. You don't need to worry about him for now. That's kind of the situation we find ourselves in. He's a net negative. He is expensive. He's taking reps away from the younger guys who have a future on this team, Oswaldo Cabrera, Oswald Peraza. There's no reason for him to get everyday reps at this point in time. He's not here beyond this year, rather. And that's the point you just made. He's gone after the season. There's no reason for us to consider him in our plans. And if he's going to hit 150 with a 300 OBP, or he's going to hit even 200 with a 300 OBP, what's the point of playing him? You're going to get elite defense from Oswald Peraza. You're going to get elite defense from Oswaldo Cabrera. You're going to get elite defense from DJ LeMahieu, and you're going to get a far more upside in the batter's box. So you tell me. The logic suggests Josh Donaldson should not be playing every day. I'm not trying to rag on the guy as a person because he's a fine guy. Whatever, he had his run-ins in the past. I have nothing against him. But the truth is, as a player, he does not help this team win games now. And he does not help this team win games in the playoffs because he is not the same player he was 10 years ago, or even 5 years ago, even 3 years ago for that matter. He dropped off heavily. And look, he played 5 games this year over 17 at-bats. He hit 125 with a 176 OBP, 29 WRC plus. The sample size is far too small to make any justifications here. He could come back and start hitting, and suddenly we're scratching our head like, oh, you know what? Maybe we should go and rethink that episode we talked about a couple weeks ago. But the truth is, it's going to take him weeks to get back to where he actually has a chance to turn things around. He's restarting his season from square one, guys. He hasn't played in over a month now, and he's coming off an injury, 2 injuries back-to-back, and it's going to take a guy of his nature that strikes out a lot and hits for power. It's going to take him weeks to find his swing. It's going to take him weeks to start seeing pitches again. So the truth is we're going to have to live through the awful performances, the multi-strikeout games, the lack of production until he starts offering something. And the hope is that there's a pot of gold at the end of the tunnel. But as we saw last year, the probability of that happening is very low. So my take on it is it's logically best to DFA him because I trust our youth more. I want to give them opportunities. But I don't think Cashman can stomach it because it's a lot of money to DFA in just a couple of weeks between. So it's unlikely. But I think that kind of wraps up this segment, guys. I'd love to hear your perspectives on it in the YouTube comment section. It's certainly an interesting one. Always happy to get your perspectives and have good conversation. Make sure to like and subscribe as always. And we'll catch you guys on the next Fireside Yankees episode.